Maybe I want this shut. Do I? You know what? We'll leave it for now. Hello everyone and welcome to my January reading wrap-up. My first reading wrap-up of technically ever. I went a little overboard and I made a PowerPoint for you guys. It is now February 1st. Before I just dove headfirst into my February TBR, I wanted to reflect on all the books that I had finished in January. All of these books, I am gonna go give like a really quick synopsis. It's not like a deep dive because then we would be here forever. We'd be here all day. In January, I finished 8 books. The first book I read this month was The Nightingale by Kristen Hannah. Oh wait, I've got it right here. This book is a historical fiction that takes place in France during World War II. Throughout the book, you get 2 different POVs. They are from 2 sisters, Vianne, which is the older sister, and the younger, more rebellious, outspoken sister, Isabel. Throughout this book, you're following their experiences of living through and surviving the Nazis' occupation in their country. This book was an easy 5-star read for me. The next book that I read in January was The Women by Kristen Hannah. I read it on my Kindle, so I'll just put a picture up here. So our main character is a girl named Frankie. She enlists in the U.S. Army to be a combat veteran. She enlists in the U.S. Army as a combat nurse with the intention of serving overseas in Vietnam. Throughout the book, you follow her experiences being in Vietnam, as well as her struggles trying to readapt to civilian life post-war. I rated this book 4.25 stars. The next book I read was The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. After reading The Nightingale and The Women, I was kind of in need of a palate cleanser because those books, being historical fictions, got a little bit, they were just a little deep and I needed something more lighthearted. So what better than to pick an Emily Henry book for that? This book is about our main character, Poppy, and her college best friend, Alex, which is a male character. This book is like a slow burn friends to lovers trope. Really, that's kind of all I have to say about it. For me personally, and this might be a hot take, it might not be, I don't know. I don't think I ever really read the reviews on this book, but this was my least favorite Emily Henry book, and I hate saying that. I don't know. Was it a bad book? It was just so predictable. I don't know. I didn't get attached to the characters. There were a lot of moments where I was just like, what? Being a slow burn romance, boy, was it slow burn. I don't want to sit here and roast the book, but I give this one a 3-star. After that, I ended up reading The Ministry of Time. I picked up this book because I believe it was one of like Haley Pham's top books of 2024. She did say it was very genre bending and some people love it, some people hate it. I was kind of one of those people to where I was left very much so with wondering what the heck I had just read. Whenever I was thinking of how to summarize this book, I genuinely could not figure out how to put it into words, so I summoned ChatGPT to help me. The Ministry of Time is about a British government agency that brings people from different time periods to the present, so time travel. The story follows a nameless civil servant as they're assigned to help a Victorian Arctic explorer, Commander Graham Gore, adjust to modern life. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. After that, I ended up reading Better Than the Movies. If you guys haven't heard of this book before, let me know what rock you're living under and I will ship it to you. This book was just so good. It had me like giggling and giddy. I just felt like a little high school girl. Like, oh, it was just so cute. Our main character, Liz, a hopeless romantic who loves classic rom-coms, teams up with her neighbor, Wes, to get the attention of her childhood crush, Michael. But as they spend more time together, Liz starts to realize that real life love might not play out like the movies. This is a young adult kind of enemies to lovers trope. They're not necessarily like enemies. They get under each other's skin. Their childhood neighbors. They poke fun at each other a lot, and that's kind of their dynamic. Kind of enemy, like frenemies. Frenemies to lovers. Easy, 5-star, didn't have to think twice. Submit rating. Moving on. After reading Better Than the Movies, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries. This book I was not even intending on reading. However, I was spending so much money on getting books on my Kindle that I convinced myself I needed to make use of my local library. This was one of the only books that my library had that was already on my TBR, and I knew I wanted to read at some point this year. So this is book 1 of a 3-book series. However, the third doesn't release until the 11th of this month. Foreshadowing, I pre-ordered it. So this book is a cozy fantasy. Our main character's name is Emily. She is a brilliant but socially awkward scholar who studies fairies. She travels to a remote village to research the elusive hidden ones, but ends up dealing with a mischievous fae, grumpy villagers, and her infuriatingly charming academic rival, Wendell. As she uncovers fairy secrets, she realizes there's more magic and maybe even love than she expected. This first book of the series is way more world building than it is plot. This is the first book ever that has given me such vivid mental images of how beautiful a world could be. Hand me a notebook and I can sketch out what I thought this world looked like. I mean, I could never do it justice. With that being said though, I absolutely loved this book and I fell head over heels for the world that she had written. I gave this book 4.5 stars and I immediately ordered the second book to this series. While I was waiting for the second book to show up in the mail, I decided to pick kind of like a quicker, shorter read off of my TBR. The book that I read to kind of fill that gap in time was The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. Again, another book recommendation that I took from, who did I get this from? Haley Pham. I think she rated this book 5 stars. The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry is about a bookstore owner, A.J. Fikry, whose life isn't going the way he planned. His wife had passed away, his business is struggling, and someone just stole his rare book. But when an unexpected package arrives at his store, everything changes, bringing new love, second chances, and a reminder of why stories matter. Personally, I thought this book was a good book, and it was a very easy read. However, I didn't fall in love with it. You know what? I think my really biggest thing is that anytime there was like an obstacle in his life or something happened, I was thinking like, oh, this is the plot of the story. This is what it, like, we're building up to something. And that just never happened. I feel like any issue that came up in this book, within a couple pages, maybe a chapter, it was already resolved. They almost gave you the answers to all of his issues too quick, which I do understand because it is telling like his whole life story. So I guess if you went into too much detail, this book would be super long. It just didn't really do it for me. I ended up giving this book 3.75 stars. At this point, the second book in the Emily Wilde series had shown up, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I think these are the most beautiful book covers I have seen to date. Like, just look at how beautiful these are. How stinking gorgeous. Anyways, getting sidetracked. Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. Emily sets out to map the mysterious Otherlands, facing tricky fae, ancient secrets, and growing feelings for Wendell. With more adventure, magic, and romance, this sequel raises the stakes in all the best ways. While the first book was very world building, the second book is definitely a lot more plot. It had me turning the pages. I was invested. I needed to figure out what was going on, what was happening. I feel like the first book was a really solid foundation for making this book even better. It's a cozy fantasy. It's not a high stakes heart palpitations fantasy. It's cozy. I gave this book 4.75 stars. Those are all the books that I read in January. And I do want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you want more real-time updates about what I'm reading, quick little reviews, you name it, I probably don't have it yet, but I'm working on it. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I hope to see you guys in the next one.